The divorce is finalized. I've already moved on.
You should too. Miss Emma Whitmore.
Whitmore?
I've already moved on. You should do the same.
Mommy, are we leaving?
Yes, sweetheart, let's go.
Miss Emma Whitmore!
The divorce hearing was over in less than 7 minutes. The judge signed the final page. Her husband didn't even look at her. Instead, he smiled at the woman sitting beside him. His mistress. "I've already moved on," he said loudly enough for everyone in the courtroom to hear. "You should do the same." A few people laughed. Emma Carter quietly picked up the small backpack that belonged to her 6-year-old daughter, Grace. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She simply held her daughter's hand and walked toward the courthouse exit. Then, an elderly man wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit suddenly stood from the last row. No one had noticed him during the hearing. His silver cane struck the marble floor once. "Miss Emma Whitmore." The entire courtroom froze. Emma slowly turned around. For the first time in 28 years, someone had called her by the surname she had buried forever. The old man's eyes filled with emotion. "I've been searching for you since the night your grandfather disappeared." The courtroom fell completely silent. Her ex-husband frowned. "What is this?" The old man ignored him. Instead, he opened an aged leather folder and carefully placed a faded family photograph beside an official inheritance document carrying the seal of Whitmore Global Holdings. Then he spoke the words that made every lawyer, every judge, and every spectator stop breathing. "The board has finally confirmed your identity. You are the last living heir to a $48 billion family empire." Her ex-husband laughed until 6 black SUVs stopped outside the courthouse. And every executive stepping out bowed, not to the Billionaire board chairman, but to the woman he had abandoned less than 10 minutes earlier. The courthouse slowly emptied. Lawyers packed their briefcases. Reporters hurried outside after hearing whispers about the mysterious elderly gentleman. Emma Whitmore remained frozen beside the courtroom door. Her 6-year-old daughter, Grace, squeezed her hand. "Mommy, who is that man?" Emma couldn't answer, because she didn't know. The silver-haired gentleman slowly approached. He removed his gloves. His voice was calm. "My name is Theodore Ashcroft. I served your grandfather for 37 years. Emma stared at him. "I think you've mistaken me for someone else." The old man gently shook his head. "No, I've spent 28 years making sure I never did." He carefully opened the worn leather folder. Inside were dozens of photographs. One showed a smiling little girl sitting on the shoulders of an elegant older man inside a beautiful rose garden. Emma's breathing stopped. She recognized the girl. It was her. The memory came back like a forgotten dream. A white mansion, endless gardens. A grandfather who always called her, "My little star." Then, nothing. The memories simply ended. She whispered, "Where did you get these?" Theodore answered softly, "They belonged to your grandfather." Before Emma could speak again, a voice interrupted. "Oh, this is priceless." Her ex-husband, Daniel Foster, walked back inside the courthouse. Beside him stood his glamorous mistress, Vanessa Cole. Daniel laughed as he looked at the photographs. "So this is your new plan? You hire an old actor to pretend you're some secret billionaire?" Vanessa folded her arms. "I expected something more believable." Several lawyers nearby quietly exchanged glances. Theodore ignored both of them. Instead, he looked only at Emma. "Your grandfather never stopped searching." Emma frowned. "My grandfather died. So did my parents. I grew up in foster care. I have the records." Theodore slowly nodded. That's what everyone believed. He reached deeper into the folder. This time, he removed an old newspaper clipping. Across the front page, one headline appeared: "Whitmore family dies in mountain plane crash." Emma stared silently. "I remember," she whispered. "The plane." Theodore looked at her carefully. "You survived. Your grandfather made sure of it." Daniel rolled his eyes. "Enough." He grabbed Vanessa's hand. "We have reservations. This fantasy can continue without us." They turned toward the exit. Then, every black SUV outside suddenly stopped. More than 20 men and women wearing dark business suits stepped onto the courthouse steps. Nobody spoke. They simply stood in two perfect lines. Daniel frowned. What now? A woman wearing a Navy executive suit entered first. Behind her, several attorneys carried secure aluminum document cases. The courthouse security guards immediately stepped aside. Even the courthouse manager looked nervous. The executive walked directly toward Theodore. Sir, the board has arrived. Theodore nodded once. Thank you, Ms. Bennett. Daniel laughed again. This keeps getting better. Vanessa smiled. Maybe they'll crown her queen next. Neither noticed that every executive completely ignored them. The lead attorney unlocked one of the silver cases. Inside rested dozens of official documents bearing the gold seal of Whitmore Global Holdings. The executive turned toward Emma. Miss Whitmore, we sincerely apologize. Our investigation took far longer than it should have. Emma blinked. What investigation? The attorney answered. For 28 years. We searched for the final legal heir. She looked completely confused. I don't understand. Theodore smiled sadly. After the plane crash, your grandfather secretly arranged for you to disappear. He believed someone inside the company wanted the Whitmore family erased. Emma's heart raced. So, he abandoned me? No. He protected you. Silence filled the room. Grace looked up at her mother. Mommy, are we rich? Emma slowly knelt beside her daughter. She brushed a strand of hair away from Grace's face. I don't know, sweetheart. I honestly don't know. At that exact moment, the lead attorney removed one final document. He placed it carefully into Emma's trembling hands. The first page carried only 4 words. Certificate of Sole Beneficiary. Emma's hands began to shake. She looked toward Theodore. This can't be real. The old man smiled gently, okayed toward the waiting executives outside the courthouse. Is only the beginning. Emma couldn't take her eyes off the certificate. The words refused to feel real. Certificate of Sole Beneficiary. Her fingers trembled. This has to be a mistake. The lead attorney smiled respectfully. We verified your identity through DNA. 3 independent laboratories. Every result matched. There is no mistake. Daniel stopped walking. For the first time that morning, the smile disappeared from his face. What inheritance? The attorney looked at him calmly. I'm afraid that information is confidential. Daniel stepped closer. She's my wife. Emma quietly corrected him. My ex-wife. The courtroom became silent again. Vanessa folded her arms. This is ridiculous. If she were really some billionaire heir, why was she living in a rented apartment? Theodore answered before anyone else could. Because someone made sure she never knew who she was. He slowly removed another photograph. It showed a luxurious estate surrounded by hundreds of acres. At the center stood an elderly gentleman. Beside him, a little girl holding a white teddy bear. Emma covered her mouth. She still had that bear. It had been the only thing she carried through foster homes. She had always believed it came from a charity donation. Theodore smiled sadly. Your grandfather gave you that on your 5th birthday. Another memory flashed before Emma's eyes. A birthday cake, white roses, a warm voice. One day all of this will be yours. She suddenly grabbed the edge of a nearby bench. Grace looked worried. Mommy? Emma knelt and hugged her tightly. I'm okay. I just remembered something. Meanwhile, Daniel slowly walked toward Theodore. Suppose I believe this. Where has this family been for almost 30 years? The old man looked directly into his eyes. Hiding, waiting, and investigating. Daniel frowned. Investigating what? The lead attorney answered. The murder of Jonathan Whitmore. The entire hallway froze. Emma looked up. Murder? I thought it was a plane crash. So did the public. The attorney nodded. Until 6 months ago, we discovered evidence proving the aircraft was deliberately sabotaged. Every lawyer nearby stopped pretending not to listen. Daniel laughed nervously. That's impossible. It happened decades ago. Exactly, the attorney replied, which is why someone believed the truth would never be found. Vanessa whispered, "This is insane." Theodore slowly turned toward Emma. "Your grandfather knew people inside Whitmore Global wanted complete control. He trusted no one. So the night before the flight, he secretly changed your travel plans." Emma's heartbeat accelerated. "So I wasn't on the plane? You were supposed to be. But he placed you in another car and told everyone you were already aboard." Emma stood speechless. For 28 years, she had believed she survived a tragedy. Instead, she had escaped it. The attorney continued, "The people responsible searched for you, but every legal record connected to your identity disappeared." Emma looked confused. "Who erased them?" Theodore hesitated. "We're still trying to answer that." Outside, television crews had multiplied. News helicopters circled overhead. Every major network wanted answers. Inside the courthouse, another executive hurried toward the group. "Sir." He handed Theodore a phone. The old man listened silently. His expression changed. "What happened?" Emma asked. Theodore lowered the phone. "The board has called an emergency meeting. They want Miss Whitmore escorted to headquarters immediately." The attorney nodded. "We've already secured the building." Daniel suddenly stepped forward. "Headquarters? What headquarters?" The executive looked at him. "Whitmore Global. Our headquarters." Daniel swallowed. "Where?" The attorney answered quietly. "1 Whitmore Plaza." Daniel's eyes widened. Everyone in Chicago knew that address. The 82-story glass tower overlooking the river. One of the most valuable corporate buildings in America. Vanessa slowly looked toward Emma, then back at Daniel. Neither of them spoke, because one terrifying realization had finally arrived. The quiet woman they had underestimated for years was no longer just Emma. She was about to walk into one of the largest corporate empires in the world as its only rightful owner. The convoy left the courthouse without delay. Four black SUVs surrounded the armored sedan carrying Emma and Grace. Chicago traffic had already been cleared. Police motorcycles escorted them through downtown. Emma sat quietly beside Grace. She still hadn't spoken much. Everything had happened too quickly. Grace looked out the window. "Mommy, are those police helping us?" Emma smiled faintly. "I think they are, sweetheart." Across the city, Daniel sat behind the wheel of his luxury sedan. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Vanessa glanced at him. "Say something." He remained silent. For the first time in years, he wasn't in control. 20 minutes later, the convoy stopped in front of 1 Whitmore Plaza. An 82-story glass tower rose into the clouds. Its polished exterior reflected the Chicago River. Hundreds of employees lined both sides of the entrance. Executives, security officers, reception managers, department directors. Nobody moved. The moment Emma stepped out, every employee bowed their heads. "Welcome home, Miss Whitmore." Emma froze. She had never seen hundreds of people greet one person with such respect. Grace tugged her sleeve. "Mommy, are they talking to you?" Emma looked around. I think they are." Theodore walked beside her. "They've been waiting a long time." The enormous glass doors opened automatically. Inside, the marble lobby stretched almost the length of a football field. Crystal chandeliers hung above a massive world map carved into the floor. Historic portraits of the Whitmore family covered the walls. Emma slowly walked forward. Then, she suddenly stopped. One portrait caught her attention. A smiling elderly man. The same man from the old photographs. Her grandfather, Jonathan Whitmore. Without realizing it, she reached out and gently touched the frame. Tears filled her eyes. "I remember him," Theodore smiled. "He never stopped loving you." Before Emma could answer, the lobby erupted into applause. She turned. More than 300 senior employees had gathered. One by one, They stood, clapping, not because she was rich, but because the Whitmore family finally had an heir again. Grace looked amazed. They're clapping for Mommy. Emma knelt beside her. No! They're welcoming us. Meanwhile, 40 floors above, the Whitmore Global Board gathered inside the executive chamber. 12 directors sat around an enormous walnut conference table. Most looked relieved. One did not. His name was Victor Langford, Chief Financial Officer. 22 years with the company. Perfect reputation. Perfect smile. Yet when he looked through the glass wall toward the lobby below, his expression darkened. One director noticed. "You don't seem happy." Victor forced a smile. "I'm simply surprised." Inside, his mind raced. She wasn't supposed to be found. Years of careful planning, gone. He quietly excused himself from the meeting. The moment the elevator doors closed, his smile disappeared. He pulled out a private phone. "They found her." A voice answered immediately. "Are you certain? I just watched her enter the building." Silence. Then, "Do not let her see the archive." The line disconnected. Victor slowly lowered the phone. For the first time in decades, fear appeared in his eyes. Back in the lobby, Emma entered a private elevator with Theodore. Only 4 buttons appeared. Lobby, board, archive, penthouse. Grace looked curiously at the golden panel. "Mommy, what's the archive?" Theodore answered quietly. "It's where your grandfather left something only one person was ever allowed to open." Emma looked at him. "What is it?" "I honestly don't know." He sealed it himself. The instructions were simple. "Open only when my granddaughter returns." Emma felt her heartbeat quicken. "My grandfather knew." Theodore nodded. "He believed you would come back one day." The elevator reached the executive floor. The doors opened. The entire Whitmore board stood waiting. One by one, every director extended a hand, until Victor Langford stepped forward. He smiled politely. "Welcome, Miss Whitmore." Emma shook his hand. For a brief second, she noticed something strange. His palm was cold. His smile never reached his eyes. And somehow, without knowing why, Emma felt the same instinct she hadn't felt since childhood. Someone in this building was pretending, and somewhere behind the walls of Whitmore Global, a secret her grandfather had protected for 28 years was finally about to come to light. The boardroom remained silent. Emma slowly released Victor Langford's hand. Something about him felt wrong. Not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't. Everyone else looked relieved. Victor looked nervous. Theodore noticed it too. He quietly stepped beside Emma. "The archive is ready." Victor immediately interrupted. "Perhaps the archive can wait. The board should finish today's ownership transfer first." Emma looked at him. "Why?" Victor smiled politely. "Legal procedure. Nothing more." Before he could continue, one of the elderly directors cleared his throat. "Actually, the founder's written instructions were very clear. The archive comes first." Victor's smile faded. For just a second. Then it returned. "Of course. If that's what Jonathan requested." A private security team escorted Emma, Grace, Theodore, and the 12 directors to the restricted archive floor. The elevator opened onto a quiet hallway unlike anything else inside the tower. Dark walnut walls, museum-quality lighting, historic photographs stretching back nearly a century. At the end stood a massive steel vault door. No keypad, no fingerprint scanner, only one brass plaque. "Whitmore Family Archive." Grace whispered, "It looks like a treasure room." Theodore smiled. "In many ways, it is." The chief archivist stepped forward. "We've never opened this vault. Not once. The founder personally sealed it 28 years ago." He handed Emma a small silver key. "It belongs to you." Emma stared at it. "My grandfather kept this?" Theodore nodded. "He carried the second copy until the day he died." Emma slowly inserted the key. The vault unlocked with a deep metallic click. The enormous door slowly opened. Inside, Thousands of documents rested on polished wooden shelves. Family journals, original company contracts, historic photographs, awards, letters. At the center of the room, a single oak desk waited beneath a skylight. Only one envelope rested there. Across the front, beautiful handwriting read, "For my granddaughter Emma." Her eyes immediately filled with tears. She carefully opened it. Inside, a handwritten letter. She recognized the signature instantly. Jonathan Whitmore, my little star. If you're reading this, then I failed to protect our family, but I succeeded in protecting you. Emma's hands began shaking. The room remained perfectly silent. Someone I trusted betrayed us. Not for money, for control. The plane was never an accident. I discovered the truth only 3 days before the flight. Emma stopped breathing. Victor slowly lowered his eyes. The person responsible still works inside Whitmore Global. I could never prove it. So I hid the only evidence where only you could find it. The letter ended with one final sentence. Open the bottom drawer. Emma looked toward the old oak desk. She slowly pulled open the bottom drawer. Inside rested a small black security box. The archivist carefully placed it on the desk. It has never been opened. Emma entered the code written inside the letter. The lock clicked. Inside, a leather notebook, several cassette recordings, original financial ledgers, and one sealed envelope marked, "To the FBI." Theodore slowly picked up the notebook. His face became pale. I remember this. Emma looked at him. What is it? The founder's personal investigation. He opened the first page. Every entry documented secret meetings, hidden payments, offshore accounts, and names. Lots of names. Most belonged to former executives. Some were already dead. One name appeared again and again. Victor Langford. The room froze. Emma slowly looked up. Victor had already stepped backward. No, that's impossible. Theodore turned another page. There are signed bank transfers. The chief attorney immediately took the notebook. His face changed. They're authentic. Victor's breathing became heavy. Jonathan forged those. He hated me. One elderly director slammed his hand on the table. Enough. You handled those accounts. Victor looked around desperately. They're lying. No one can prove anything. Theodore quietly placed the final cassette into an old recorder sitting inside the archive. The tape began playing. Static filled the room. Then, Jonathan Whitmore's voice echoed through the archive. If you're hearing this, Victor betrayed this family. He sold our flight plans and accepted payment to remove every Whitmore heir. Victor's face turned completely white. The recording continued. If I fail, protect Emma. She is the future of this company. Silence. Absolute silence. Victor suddenly turned toward the exit. But 2 Whitmore security officers were already standing there. Neither moved. The chief attorney quietly reached for his phone. Call federal authorities. No one leaves this room. Emma looked down at her grandfather's letter. A single tear landed on the paper. For 28 years, she believed she had lost her family by accident. Now, she finally knew the truth. Someone had tried to erase the Whitmore family forever, and her grandfather had spent his final days making sure that one little girl would survive long enough to come back. Federal agents arrived within 12 minutes. No sirens, no chaos, just quiet professionalism. Victor Langford stood frozen inside the archive. The lead agent stepped forward. Victor Langford, you're under arrest for conspiracy, corporate fraud, obstruction of justice, and involvement in the murder investigation of Jonathan Whitmore. Victor looked around desperately. This company belongs to me. I built it. Theodore calmly answered. No, you only managed it. You never owned it. The agents placed Victor in handcuffs. As they escorted him away, he stopped in front of Emma. I spent 28 years protecting this empire. Emma met his eyes. You spent 28 years protecting yourself. Without another word, he disappeared through the archive doors. Silence followed. The board slowly stood. One by one, each director faced Emma. The oldest member stepped forward carrying a polished wooden folder. Miss Whitmore, according to your grandfather's final instructions, and by unanimous vote of the board, we officially recognize you as Chairwoman and Chief Executive Officer of Whitmore Global Holdings. No applause, no celebration, only quiet respect. Emma accepted the folder with trembling hands. She looked toward the portrait of her grandfather. I hope I make you proud. 2 weeks later, news channels across America carried the same headline. Lost heiress takes control of Whitmore Global. Financial markets reacted immediately. Investors welcomed the company's new leadership. Employees applauded Emma's decision to protect jobs instead of cutting them. For the first time in decades, Whitmore Global was trusted again. Daniel watched the news from his apartment. The television showed Emma ringing the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. Beside her stood Grace, smiling proudly. Daniel quietly switched the television off. The expensive apartment suddenly felt empty. Vanessa had already left. The luxury lifestyle he had chosen had disappeared almost as quickly as it arrived. For the first time, he understood what he had truly lost. Not the money, his family. That Friday afternoon, Emma returned to the small neighborhood where she had once rented a modest apartment. She carried no security, no cameras, only Grace's hand. Together, they visited the tiny park where Grace had learned to ride her bicycle. Grace smiled. Mommy, can we still come here even if we're rich? Emma laughed softly. Of course. A home isn't decided by money. It's decided by the people who make you feel safe. Grace wrapped her arms around her mother. I like our new home, but I loved you even when we had the old one. Emma closed her eyes. Those simple words meant more than every fortune she had inherited. She looked toward the Chicago skyline. Somewhere beyond those buildings, her grandfather's dream was finally alive again. Not because the Whitmore family had become wealthy, they already were, but because the last person carrying the Whitmore name had finally come home. The end.